Now, angry protests over an American-made anti-Islam film have spread throughout the Middle East, through Asia and into Australia. Joining me now to discuss the situation and whether the US can defuse the situation is international relations expert Robert Patman. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Rachel.
This issue is escalating. President Obama has been criticised for not acting sooner, albeit criticised by his presidential opponent, Mitt Romney. Does it have the potential, do you think, to impact on the US elections?
I think it already has. I think Mr. Romney reacted very quickly, and he actually reacted to a statement which was given out by the US Embassy in Cairo before the protests actually began, and that statement attempted to distance the US government from this disrespectful film, which both President Obama and Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, said is offensive to Islam. But Mr. Romney seized on that statement as a form of apology for the protests which followed, which of course is, how shall I put it, putting a bit of a spin on events, because the administration did not in any way provide any excuses for the attacks which followed, which of course killed 4 diplomatic US officials. But Mr. Romney has put the spin on it that this is another example of weak leadership from the Obama administration, and its weakness has in fact generated the attacks which followed, which again may in the short term catch attention, but it may rebound spectacularly against Mr. Romney when people begin to come to terms with exactly what's happened. Indeed.
The US ambassador to New Zealand too, Professor, has said that it's incorrect to label this film as being a US-made film. What's your understanding of that?
Well, it's certainly made in the United States, but it did not involve the US government, and the US government has been at pains to distance itself from the film. And this is an administration which has been working very hard to build much better relations with the Islamic world, and naturally it is absolutely furious about this film, but under American law there's limits to how far it can prevent people from putting together productions like this and then posting them onto YouTube.
Of course, I guess the incident that first triggered our attention to this was when the US ambassador was killed in Benghazi in Libya. Washington, no doubt, will be still looking for justice for those deaths, presumably?
Yes, Mr. Obama made it clear almost immediately in the wake of that tragic episode that justice must be, those who are responsible must be brought to account. We've heard in the last 24 hours 50 people have been arrested in Libya. And one thing I think we have to be clear about here is that I don't think these protests are necessarily anti-American per se. They are certainly against the video, the offensive video which is circulating. And one thing which must come home to many people, including those in Washington, is just that when these productions, these films are put together, how quickly they spread. We live in such an interconnected world, 33 countries now involved in the protest. I'm reasonably confident the Obama administration can defuse the situation once it becomes apparent that the administration had nothing to do with the actual generation of the offensive video.
So how can they defuse it, do you think? What steps can Washington take to cool the whole situation down? Because it's certainly gone global, hasn't it?
It has gone global. I think the administration, first of all, must remain steady. It must indicate there's been no change in its policies towards the democratisation changes which have occurred in the Arab world, and it must also indicate that they have not changed their position on building better relations between the Islamic world and the United States. Now, this is patient work, and in the meantime the administration will probably feel a bit vulnerable to attacks from Mr. Romney, who seems to be on a bit of a mission to project Mr. Obama as being an apologist and not really asserting American leadership. Mr. Obama, of course, would argue Mr. Romney shoots first and aims later. That's his words, not mine. And the other thing is that Mr. Romney seems to be, he hasn't actually said what he would have done differently from Mr. Obama. And the other, I think one thing that Mr. Romney himself will come under pressure for is to say exactly how his policies would differ from Mr. Obama.
All right, Professor Robert Patman in Dunedin, thank you.
Thank you.